U.S. President Donald Trump's new blanket tariffs came into force on Tuesday, but investors appear to be shrugging the changes off, with one analyst telling CNBC there were bigger issues. True that. Trump announced over the weekend a new blanket 15% global levy on imports to the U.S. Well, the president initially announced plans to impose a 10% duty on global imports before saying that the rate would rise to the fully allowed and legally tested 15% level. I think that's only for 150 days that they can do that, though. That says right here. The announcement came after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Trump's country-specific tariffs, a source of major market volatility, when they were first unveiled by the White House last April. Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act empowers the president to implement tariffs of up to 15% for up to 150 days. Okay. Trump said in a Truth Social post that any country that wants to play games with the Supreme Court decision will be met with a much higher tariff. Okay, so I see where they're going with this. So a couple things that I would look at here. Investors aren't necessarily worrying about tariff crazy right now, changes or anything like that, I guess I would say. The Supreme Court ruling essentially saying that Trump can't do it this very specific way. The Supreme Court is not out here to do, they don't necessarily come out here and do blankets across all of it. They're just saying that the president doesn't necessarily have the authority to do tariffs the way that Trump did it, that specific way, the IEEPA or something like that. They're not saying that the president can't do tariffs. They're just saying they're limiting on his ability and powers, the checks and balances, to do tariffs the way he did it. So he is allowed to do this 15% tariffs for 150 days. Now, there's arguments to be made where he should have that authority or not. The arguments are made, Rand Paul goes on a podcast the other day and says that if the Supreme Court follows the law, then they will deny his tariffs, which is what they did, and I suspect that's exactly what they were supposed to do. Now, there's also tons of arguments to be made whether the president should have that authority. But I can see how countries might want to leverage that and take advantage of that. Other countries have kind of more absolute authority over that type of play, whereas we're taking a card out of the hand of our presidential leader to trade and make deals. However, how does it affect us? It's obviously not affecting traders too much, but our boy Sansing found this other article too. Amazon and Etsy stocks react to Supreme Court tariff ruling. It's essentially showing that consumers now are changing the way they purchase items, their purchasing behaviors. They're going after the lower knockoff brands or different brands, whatever it may be, through Amazon and Etsy. It's part of it. It's part of the game. Take a quick look at it. Amazon, Etsy, other e-commerce stocks pop after Supreme Court rules against Trump's tariffs. Yeah, so they went up tremendously because we're having people being able to purchase a lot of the items at the lower price now again. Or focusing on that. E-commerce stocks that were exposed to President Trump's far-reaching global tariffs rallied Friday after the Supreme Court struck down a key pillar of the president's economic agenda. 6-3 ruling, the court said Trump does not have the legal authority to impose tariffs under the International Economic Powers Act, the method by which many of the levies were invoked. IEEPA does not explicitly mention tariffs. The decision sent Amazon and Wayfair stock up 2%, while Etsy climbed 8%. Shares of Shopify rose 1%, and eBay popped 3%. Pinduoduo Holdings, parent company of ultra-cheap online marketplace Temu, jumped 2%. So I don't know. I didn't look at the tracker of all these stocks over the past couple months of seeing this. I would imagine, like from an investor perspective, we kind of talked about it. They're not getting too hyped about this because they saw probably a lot of the stocks were in question. I would imagine that a lot of these stocks were already kind of on their way down. So them going up as a response to this is not necessarily massive jumps to where they were not long ago, 6 months ago. But it's good to see that stocks go up, of course. We love seeing that when it comes to trading or any type of investment that you're doing. But when it looks at the way it affects us and our business, I don't think we need to be looking at it too short term. I would say we need to kind of make sure we're looking at what the play is over 5 years in some of these stocks and how it's going to affect logistics and supply chain and e-commerce. On our side, we build bulletproof businesses so that we can sustain these bullets of tariff changes like this.